shorter delay this time. So now if we say anything, we can't dump it. Oh no.
Oh no.
So, hey everybody, this is Jimmy Don't Show. It's 4 o'clock on Wednesday, and that's when we do the show. We do it Wednesday and Sunday, as you can see from our little logo here. Twice a week, live. Also, I'll post a copy up on YouTube with timestamps for all the, hey Robert, hey Gene, timestamps for all the subjects so you can easily browse through them. And if you, well, I had something else to say. Wait, today's the 17th of April 2019. So thanks for joining us. Oh, also, we're available on iTunes in audio format and Spotify and places like that. So, what's happening?
Good question. What's happening?
Doc.
Well, tomorrow's the big day.
Why is that?
The report.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There's nothing, man. That. Okay.
No. I mean, I think it's great. The redacted Mueller report to be released on Thursday, and of course, my comment on this is let the games begin.
Well, look, they're not going to release. What they're going to do? They're going to release something, and then it's not going to have all the pages, and then they're just going to say, "See, they left out pages," and then there'll be people who come on and say, "Oh my God, what was in those pages?"
Oh no, I know all that.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I mean,
there's not. This
it's
is
all going to be.
just.
But I think what I thought was cute about this is the redactions are color coded. Well, I mean, it says here the color coded indicate whether it involves classified material, grand jury information, or damage to the reputation of a private citizen, peripheral to the investigation. Which usually is just black everything out.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they're actually going to do that. But as I say, tomorrow, after it gets done, I don't know how much of this is going to be. It's 400 pages, I guess, with half of it blacked out or yellowed out or oranged out or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And that's when, of course, everybody that thinks they have a dog in this fight is going to have an opinion. That'll be an opinion on what's not there.
Yeah.
Which is kind of
That's all they can do.
No, I know that because and actually they're going to certainly have opinions on what is there, but the main thing is going to be and then the big question marks. Right. So that'll be fun. Anyway, we'll have to talk about that a little bit on Sunday. Sorry, I'm going to do that. So anyway, the next thing I've got here, another California thing.
Okay.
California moving towards a ban on little shampoo conditioner bottles from hotels.
Yeah.
Now, this is hysterical because who doesn't have a closet full of these? I mean, if you stay in a hotel, you take them. You take them with you. And what's so funny about this is that I'm not sure what the deal is. I suppose if you use it and throw it in the trash can there at the hotel, maybe that's one thing. But this is another, stab at the giant plastics, which, of course, as we know,
is that their motivation? Is it single-use?
Single-use plastics.
Right. Well, this is just more ridiculousn's from my perspective.
Oh, no question.
What we pointed out in the last show is that the United States contributes 1% of the plastic worldwide. So you can take every shampoo bottle on every shelf on every supermarket store and not even begin to make a dent. Second, I keep saying our trash in the United States is collected by our municipalities. I mean, they throw it in the trash. They don't go out and throw it in a river. You don't throw it in the LA.
You do.
Yeah, right. You throw it in the LA River, which is a trash. The LA River is a joke. For everybody who knows, it's just a drainage ditch, really.
Okay, right.
But
that's the one with the big concrete.
Grease. If you remember the race scene from Grease.
Well, that's not all in a couple of Dog Day Afternoon.
There's a bunch of them, I'm sure. But the point is that the trash is collected and disposed of properly from the standpoint of how we know how to dispose of this stuff at this point. So our trash isn't a problem. Certainly these shampoo bottles aren't a problem. This is just corporate advertising, as far as I'm concerned. This is them getting pushed on their thing. We've eliminated plastic. Please ask your attendant if you would like a plastic bag.
Yeah, right.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I noticed it even just literally in the last 2 weeks. A restaurant that I frequent here has stopped giving out the straws.
Oh my God! They gave me a paper straw.
Did they?
At a restaurant the other day. It was horrible. I mean, it's horrible. Honestly, it does. There's something. How do you
when I was growing up, when I was a kid, 50, 60, 70 years ago.
80, 90, 100 years ago.
100 years ago, they were all paper straws. You know.
Look, I understand you guys used reeds and stuff back
Yeah,
in the
right.
day. But look, we graduated from that. We got to the phenomenal plastic straw, then the bendy straw, which is like magic, and seriously, and now we're going back to the paper things, which I mean they don't suck is the problem. Okay, that's the problem. Look,
They'll close right up on you.
there's that, but also I don't know if everybody, if it's just me, it probably is, or there's some small group of people, but if I were to like bite into a popsicle stick, just imagining myself chomping down on one of those wooden popsicle sticks makes my face cringe in some weird way, and the straw does the same thing. It's literally disturbing to me somehow because it's paper.
Ban paper
Paper straws, right.
That's right.
Well, I mean, it's just, if you don't have an objection to those straws, you haven't used one yet. So that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's interesting because there's Santa Cruz County out there has already banned, first jurisdiction, they've already banned the little bottles in hotels. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, I'm not sure what you do, when you go. Of course, now you have to take your big plastic bottle, I guess.
Yeah.
To have soap and conditioner and everything.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's
Like I said, it's just whatever. This is
Yeah.
trivial
it's their thing.
advertising.
Now, this is another thing that I thought was kind of cute. Germany charges former Volkswagen CEO with serious fraud over Dieselgate.
Okay. Keep
Okay,
going.
this was when the Volkswagen modified the software so that when they would go to the testing
Right,
facility,
okay. It's that-
it would
that
show it's
scam.
fine. Yeah, okay. But I'm laughing because it's a German thing, okay?
Right.
And it's called Dieselgate.
Right.
I mean, when will you forget? It is just every small little thing in the world after Watergate. I mean, I should make a dictionary of how many gates there are.
Sure.
Because,
It's a good little suffix.
but I just think it's so funny.
Well, it's just a word. It just
I know.
add it to the dictionary. Its suffix means legal action.
Yeah.
Gate. Put
Well,
whatever you want on the end of it.
Right. Well, it's usually some kind of fraud legal action or something like that against some kind of a
Government
fraud.
thing or
Yeah,
something.
right. It's just funny. I just had to laugh. When will Watergate ever die? Never. It's come into the what you call it. So anyway, it's what's interesting, of course, is that what's his name? Peters, Tom Peters, I think it is. He's the guy that runs an automobile website, very, very, very popular. Eric Peters, maybe it is. Anyway, and he's a car guy, totally car guy, and he is one of these people that says a lot of the stuff that the government has put on us is outrageous and counterproductive. And of course, one of the things he did talk about was the emissions from the Volkswagen, even without the software, was a minuscule compared to what it used to be on diesel engines. In other words, what had happened is they wanted 95% of the pollutions, of the exhaust pollutions, eliminated, and for the diesel engines. And apparently, the diesel before the software eliminated only 92%. So they tweaked the software to get it up to the 95%. But of course, as soon as it went on the road, it went back down to the. Point is that the difference was nothing. I mean, and this is what happens when you. It's interesting to watch when they do these emission things. They'll say, "Well, as we know, we've already reduced emissions by well over 90% since the 70s, easily over that much." But now, they say, "Well, we want to reduce these emissions by another 50%." Well, wait a minute. So now you're down to 5% of pollutants, and you want to reduce it to 2.5%. That's a 50% reduction.
Yeah, okay.
So, but that's huge. I mean, the differences in what you have to do to a car is phenomenal, and you probably, in a lot of instances, you might even be able to live with it. What of course is also fascinating about this, and Eric Peters talks about this a lot, is the down the pike. And up the Pike River, whatever it is, pollutants that are caused by going to a hybrid car or a electric car, or whatever it is, and they're not anywhere near as pollutant free as you might think, and that's just because. But everybody says I'll talk about this later. You can raise the flag and of something this is pollution free on one area, and
Well, that's helpful though. If we could relocate the pollution to a centralized location, a power plant that's generating electricity from which we could get the batteries to use in electric cars, which concentrate the pollution now in the locations where they're used because they emit on site. The cars emit, that's why we had horrible pollution, as we've talked about many times, in Los Angeles in the
Yeah,
in the
boy, I remember
70s.
that smog.
Yeah, and so it's good to at least have options, and we will. They'll get
Well,
better.
it's interesting because they also do done some studies, some long-term economic studies on wind farms and solar, and they're saying, well, not what you think it is, as far as curbing pollution. So and there's just studies. I've seen them. Who knows? Experts. Okay. Well, of course, the other piece of big news, which we're not.
That's our thorough coverage.
Yeah, thorough coverage, right? Is of course the Notre Dame Cathedral,
Right. That's the big news of the week.
and it
If it's news.
if it's news, right? That's the other thing. The conspiracy theorists were out while it was still burning,
Well, of course.
and they
The
had
church has been there for 850 years. You would think it would be fireproof at this point.
not only fireproof. I mean, what was interesting, I thought, was that some of the beams in there are like 600 years old or something. The wood.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but
A portion of the roof was 1,000 years. The trees were that old.
okay. But what was interesting about it is a lot of people don't realize this, but wood, as it ages, continues to harden, just like concrete.
Okay.
And it gets harder and harder and harder as time goes on. And when they talk about, that's why they dig up some of these.
Petrifies, right?
No. Yeah, of course that too. Yeah, that's ultimate hardness. No, I think it actually, over the years it gets harder, and you can have. That's one of the reasons that they here in Florida they try and drag up the old wood from underneath the
Railroads.
Well, those, of course, but in the ones in the water, a lot of the cypress or whatever that's in the water, they drag it out, and that's old wood, and it turns out it's pretty hard stuff. Okay, so I just thought it was interesting to see that I believe it was at least one or two of the media stream people, Facebook or whatever, cut out a lot of the feed people that were putting video up.
Right. Well, look. This is what this comes down to is: is it an act? Was it intentional? And we're in gray area right here. We're 3 days out or something, so nobody knows at this point.
No.
But I think it's telling that some people have already come out and said it's definitely not intentionally.
Right.
That seems to me like a premature assertion.
Little.
But it's come from some French government official, which we all know we can't believe the governments at this point.
No.
They're perfectly willing to tell us lies in order to keep the peace or whatever else they think it's beneficial. And even Scott Adams backed them up on all kinds of stuff today. I watched his podcast. He was like, "Oh, it's fine if they tell the lie in order to keep the peace." And I'm like, no, you don't. That assumes that if you tell people the truth, that they're just going to pick up their guns and go.
Right.
And that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen.
More of the yellow vests. I don't.
Right. And this goes back to the incitement situation, which I want to get to first. Second. But first, I want to do a little bit more of the Notre Dame thing. We obviously have to wait. We got to wait. It's got to take them, I would guess, an order of weeks. One or
Minimum.
two at least minimum to go through all that wreckage and, do the test.
Damn things are 100, 200 feet tall. It's not like just
Exactly.
walk through and.
But they should be able to determine whether or not there were accelerants, where the fire started, how fast it spread, that kind of stuff, and whether or not that was a natural occurrence. So we'll wait and see. But I'm certainly not above speculating. I mean, not enough people listen to this show that we're going to set off any riots or anything.
No.
But I'm certainly suspicious. Like I said, 850 years. It's not like fire never happened in Paris during 850 years of history.
And of course, with something that iconic, you would expect that it would be protected 63 different ways from Sunday.
Exactly.
I mean, fire extinguishers everywhere.
Everywhere.
And they would have the fire station next door.
Sprinklers. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you have? I would imagine this structure must have come under threat hundreds of times over the centuries, and they must have considered safety measures on all of those occasions and increased them. I would assume at various.
You would think.
Except, well, we know that. Just within the last 100 years, the place was in dilapidated condition. There was a famous author, I can't remember who it was, wrote a big piece about it, which got people more interested in it. I think it was during the 19th century, and that's when they built the middle spire and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But So okay, maybe it wasn't in perfect shape, but still, I'm still suspicious of it. We'll see. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the jury's still out. I don't think it's bad at all to talk about the threats on the thing or any truth that's associated with prior threats.
Yeah, well, it was, as I said, when you look at what actually burned and everything, it was kind of interesting. But as the guy said, well, we saved it, so to speak. We saved a bunch of it, apparently. The two spires and that kind of stuff, not the one in the middle.
Yeah.
But but then Macron, I guess, has come out and says, we're going to rebuild it in 5 years. Interesting. It originally took 100 years.
Yeah, at least.
It took well, I believe I looked at it. When they started and when they ended was just about a century.
Okay.
And so it means that, when the lifespan in those days was, 30, 35 years.
Well, that's a little bit of a misnomer, too, because they did that based on averages and because it was a high number of infant mortality that brought down.
Oh, okay. So well, even if they, here's the deal. There was a couple of generations that were working on it that never got to see it.
3 generations at least. But they were working with 12th century technology.
Well, right. That's true.
I mean, literally stone knives and bear skins and stuff. So, well, almost. And so
they obviously knew what they were doing when the Masons and everybody like that.
Yeah, and what I was curious as to, I wonder if all those building techniques have survived. It's
a lot of them, it's interesting.
Certainly the skill sets have
vaporized.
Exactly.
Well, this comes up time and time again. I was watching one of those things on YouTube about the history of civilizations, and some of these, even here in Central America, the stones are so perfectly fit together. It looks like they were poured in and then solidified. And you just, and they're like 50 tons, and they fit together perfectly. Not like a regular brick where they're square. These are rocks that are all misshapen, and they still fit together perfectly. Yeah, it's just amazing.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
But, I think this brings up the incitement situation that's been going around. I want to touch on that real quick. There's several different accusations flying around. Trump incited violence against Ilhan Omar, and I don't know, Shapiro and Media Matters and whoever. There's a bunch of people after. I'm going to give you the legal basis for incitement now. Okay. And first, we've talked about in the past how really freedom of speech has been eroded a bit, and you can be attacked and jailed and all kinds of sued for speech that you probably shouldn't be able to be attacked for these days.
Right.
But that being said, the way you can think about it is in the context of a conspiracy talk. That is to say, if you and I decide to go rob a bank and we talk about it, and then you go and rob the bank, and somehow I gave you the idea, let's say I helped you with the plan or whatever, my speech has contributed to the crime. And it's a direct relationship between the speech and the crime. But for my having laid out the plan for you, let's say, you could not have committed the crime. And that really highlights the standard that is out there for incitement. Ask yourself this question. When you think that somebody's words have incited some violence, say to yourself, but for those words, would the violence have happened? And if the answer is maybe, then there's no incitement. Okay. So if the person might have taken the action, even if it might have taken the bad action, even if the words weren't said, then there's no incitement because they were inclined to do it anyway, and that was the motivation for them doing it. It wasn't these words. They were going to do it anyway, and that's the way that it almost always is in situations when somebody says, "Oh, I listened to Marilyn Manson lyrics and then I went and shot up a school." Yeah, okay. But before that, for the previous 10 years, you were involved in satanic rituals and whatever else and got the entire mindset into your head. And then the Marilyn Manson thing tripped off one little thing. That's not Marilyn Manson's fault, okay? That's your entire history's fault. And it's the same situation we have here. Ilhan Omar and the president. If people would have made these threats against her, whether or not the president said anything, then no incitement.
Okay.
And even if it's a maybe, then no incitement. And I think we have to conclude that because unless you can see a direct causative relationship between the words and the violence, direct causative relationship.
Okay, because I can see where there'd be some question mark.
Question mark doesn't get you there.
Okay.
It has to be.
In other words, if you're standing in front of a crowd,
Right.
and say, somebody, oh God, I'll kill that guy, I don't know.
Right.
And then somebody from the crowd goes and does it, what's that?
Well, it's going to depend if you were. That's a gray area. But
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, that could cross the line if you
I
were
see.
looking right at somebody with a gun and you said, "Hey, somebody should go over there and do something about it." If they could imply that you told the person to do that, then you could be convicted of that. But the case law that's come out on that, there have been cases like that, as you can
Okay.
imagine. There were speeches on campus,
Right.
and the guy said, somebody ought to do something about that administration building, and sure enough, somebody went over there and firebombed the building or whatever. And for a while, they would come back at the person and say, "You're under arrest," but they. If the person could say, "I was joking," or if they can say,
Never expected him to do that.
right, exactly. If that was the case, then you potentially have a defense. So
I would guess. Okay, well that's going to be interesting. Okay, moving on. I thought this was great. The baby T-Rex goes on sale on eBay. Sparking a paleontologist outcry. This is it could be yours for just $3 million. And that's actually, I think, if it's complete, I think it's pretty well complete. It's drawn criticism, of course, from the scientific community, and of course, I'm one of those that says if you're a museum, get your donation people up, and go get the $3 million and go buy, because it's a buy it now, $2.95 million.
buy it now.
Well, and it's got a good provenance. I mean, it's okay. And that is to say, the skeleton, estimated to be 68 million years old, was first discovered in 2013 on private land in Montana. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there are farmers all over the place that will lease you permission to go and dig up parts of their land for fossil hunter, and the farmer gets cut in for part of the deal, because he's leasing it, of course. He whatever he charges per day or per square foot or whatever it is, but the guy that digs it up is the owner, even though he's on the farmer's land. That's the way those fossil thing works. And of course, out west is there's a lot of area that is rich in fossils. Go ahead.
There's a layer of government interference, though, especially where it concerns human artifacts.
Oh no, that I know.
Okay.
No, but this is for dinosaurs.
Yeah,
These are fossils. Now, one of the things is, when you think about it, human artifacts very often are not fossils. That is to say that they're actual bones.
right, or spearheads and things like
Right.
that. But I know that those are protected. That is to say, if you find a spearhead in the creek around here, you're supposed to turn it in.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. And I think
I did
that
not
there are
know that.
prohibitions against these types of sales.
Well, there isn't apparently about this one. This has been cleared.
Is it in the United States?
Oh yeah, it's up in Montana or someplace.
Okay.
No. In fact, what happened was, I don't know exactly what the deal was, but I think the guy, the skeleton estimated became the property of the man who discovered it. Alan Dietrich, a professional fossil hunter, in 2017, Dietrich lent the fossil to the University of Kansas Natural History Museum, where it was still on display when Dietrich made the surprise decision to put it up for auction. Now, it's my understanding that he went and cleared the fact that he could sell it with some authorities. I'm not sure what.
Like that always works.
Well, no, it did.
I know, it's at least an
apparently,
effort.
let me put it this way: nobody's suing him yet.
Right.
The paleontologists are not saying you can't do it. They're decrying the fact that he is doing it.
Well, why? I mean, what do they think? Somebody's going to buy it and then destroy it for fun or something?
No,
They're going to spend $3 million to...
What they're saying is, what they're worried about. Analysts of the skeleton may help to settle a major debate in paleontology over whether the small Tyrannosaurs from North America are infants or should be classified as something else. Such research may now be impossible, with the fossil likely to end up in a private collection.
What do you mean may now be? It may now be possible because it ended up
Exactly. I mean, the fact is that that's the whole thing. It may turn out that somebody who buys it says, yeah, okay, come on.
Yeah, maybe
we don't know yet.
Maybe the buyer is interested in the artifact because they love it and want to explore it and want to bring other scientists in there to analyze it. And
We don't
they're going
know.
to set up a whole program. Well, exactly. The whole point is that to assume that it's a nefarious cause is just
Well,
absurd.
where they're worried the specimen is going to be outside of scientific research, and of course the question is,
How? Why?
yeah,
No.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
How do we know? We don't know that the buyer's not a freaking scientist.
well, that's the other thing. It's $3 million. Now, I don't know about you, but when you see museums that are paying way more than that for some painting, you know, I would think for some fossil like this that they could crank up the old donor mill, and because it's a buy it now thing. All you have to do is walk in there with
And look, here's what it comes down to. If you can't raise that kind of money, then nobody cares.
Right. Yeah, there you go. That's right. I mean, you think, yeah, exactly. That's right. That's right. You know, I'd certainly be putting up a GoFundMe or something on it.
Yeah, why? I mean, if that's your goal, go for it.
Yeah. Okay, next item on my list. Panic erupts at the Fifth Avenue Apple Store in New York after a bed bug sighting. The bed bug sightings, which began about a month ago, culminated in a furor on Friday when a bed bug. Now I don't know if you know this, but bed bugs are like
I
microscopic.
was just going to say, how do you cite a bed bug?
Apparently, it's a big bed bug. I guess I don't know. It's not, it's you know it's I don't know.
Okay. I mean, they're not like ticks or something. I don't think that.
No. But they can be bed bugs can be.
Visible signs?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they are. I think you end up. What you do is you end up with bites.
Right.
If it's in the bed, you know you don't see them.
Oh, yeah.
But at night they'll bite you.
Yeah.
So you wake up with bites, and that's the indication of bed bugs.
I had a friend who was an exterminator, and go ahead.
Well, they've done this.
Okay.
Needless to say, the employees described a mass exodus of employees who fled the store, and said that the employees said the management giving the runaround about the bed bug risk until they finally caved in on Friday, and brought in a bed bug sniffing dog, which which confirmed that bed bugs had been present in the staff locker room. Now,
right here.
What? Right. So what was interesting? They did have an exterminator in there.
Uh-huh.
The exterminator came in and said, "Yeah, okay, you're free."
Oh.
Well, they came back.
Yeah.
And so the exterminator was called back in. Now I don't know now or whatever.
Well-
but now that the dog came in and said, "Well, they were here."
Well, and here's my information about bed bugs. I, at one point, had a tick infestation. We had 5 dogs, and we got the wrong tick collar. We thought we got a tick and flea collar, but it was just a flea collar.
Okay.
So the ticks started jumping on the dogs. All of a sudden, there were ticks everywhere.
Wow.
Everywhere. I mean, literally coming out of the walls.
Okay.
Literally. So we called an exterminator who came out and sprayed the hell out of everything. Everything. And he said, I got to come back and do it again in another couple of weeks or something. And we got to talking about it, and we said, what about bed bugs? And he said, okay, so let me tell you about bed bugs. He said, when you find bed bugs in your house, what you do is you take everything in your house and burn it.
Oh shit.
He said, there is no getting rid of those things.
Wow.
And he said, they are intractable. You just burn everything and start over. That's it. It's done. And this is a guy who, I mean, like I said, we must have had thousands of ticks in the house coming out of the walls. And he got rid
What
of
were
them.
they feasting on?
I guess the 5 dogs.
Okay.
And we had a couple of cats too. The cats didn't really have any of them, but I mean, it happened in like a couple of weeks. Just bam, you know. And again, we thought we were treating them. We were like, okay, we got the collars. Here they are. You know, and how come it's not working? And then we figured it out. But they were, you know, the other colors were right next to those on the shelf. It was that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, do a little freaking color coding or have a damn image or something.
Yeah.
No. I just said the
flea,
brand
you know, like-
exactly. Hey,
or-
come
or
on,
a tick.
a flea and a tick on one, and then just a flea on the other one. It's so easy. But no, they just had like the name brand, and everybody says just get this name brand, and so like I said, it's I hate it when they do that. It's like Starbucks has their regular coffee and their decaffeinated coffee in the same bag. It's the same bag.
Really?
Every once in a while, you grab the other one. They're right next to each other in the same bag, same color, everything. Little tiny letters. There's a little word that says decaf.
It's funny you should mention that because I have always assumed when I go to the store, all the green bags are decaf and all the red bags are not.
And that's for particular brands who have learned the color code.
Almost all of them.
Well, Starbucks does not do that. I can tell you, they're buttheads about it. I've bought several.
How would anybody? What is with decaf anyway? I mean, it's like having cocaine. This doesn't work.
I don't know, but so bed bugs. I say burn the Apple Store at this point, and
burn the Apple Store.
Start
Well,
over.
it'll be interesting as you traipse through there. Okay, next thing I've got here is Pentagon's bookkeeping is atrocious. The books are wrong on everything, and there's a investigative. Well, it's interesting. Gosh. Mark me surprised. Taibbi, who's an investigative reporter, I think, kind of guy, recently dove headfirst into the insanity that is the Pentagon's finances to find how much the much lauded audit of the organization, which gets $500 billion a year, failed to give the DoD either a pass or fail. They came up and said, "Well, I don't know." And one of the reasons, seriously, it's
I don't know. What was my job again?
Yeah, right. Found that the Pentagon operates under a system that is inherently unable to provide financial accountability. And one of the things that I find interesting, and when you talk about accountability, of course, who pays? I mean, what if you did find out that there was massive fraud or something like that?
Well, that's the problem with having any type of government in charge. It's because they are literally protected from liability by the law. So they can do to you what the private citizens can't do, which is lie, cheat, and steal, and basically say, "Oh, I was just doing my job," and so it's.
Well, we have here. It's interesting because one of these during our budget meetings here locally. Now, this is not $500 billion. The budget meeting here in the city or the county, I forget which, is $330 million a year, something like that, or roughly. That's the budget, and it's a 600-page budget. And if you try and go through the budget at 600 pages, it's just a convoluted mess. I mean, it's like the giant spaghetti monster. I mean, it's just so everything refers to. If you had to be a forensic guy on that, you'd be lost. And I think they must do that on purpose, because every once in a while they'll find some little $10,000 error, and out of a $330 million budget. But basically, the accounting on governments is, if here with $330 million you can't get it right, you can bet that with $500 billion they're certainly not going to have it even remotely correct. And as you know, the budget of the United States is a stack of books about this tall. I mean, they've always, the different parts of it. Good luck on figuring that out. So anyway, what they found, let's see, inherently unsafe, and it's organized so badly that the Pentagon at the end of every year goes back to ask for more money for the next year. They invent the numbers because they have no audit trail. And it's interesting when you realize the amount of, people talk about eliminating fraud and waste. They never can do it. It's never going to happen until they burn it down.
Well, look, what eliminates fraud and waste is competition.
Right.
Competition. It doesn't come from internally. It doesn't happen internally. Companies, men who are cooperating for benevolent causes, if they're not challenged, will lead somehow into monopolistic situations, and they will.
Well, it is interesting because that happens. You will see this with private companies, believe it or not.
That's what I'm saying.
And what happens with private companies, either they'll go bust for competition, or they'll do a massive reorganization.
Massive.
And this is where they clear out, managers and everything and slim way down suddenly, and just to start over. So
or there's a takeover or something, something massive.
Yeah.
Because the system has internally corrupted itself.
Right. And they have, and it's interesting because they call this the culture. I remember when years ago, I think it was Colgate Palmolive or one of those massive things that has essentially, it's not a monopoly because there's other toothpastes or whatever they do, or detergents or whatever, but they had a culture of the kind of culture they had, and it was turned out that with that culture their bureaucracy was going crazy, and they finally had to slim down one. They didn't go out of business, but the massive reorganization. I remember it was 30, 40 years ago when that happened.
Well, unfortunately, we're not ever going to get rid the Pentagon budget situation.
No.
As long as we're a nation with a big giant military like that, that's what's going to.
Interesting you should say that. I finally got on to answer a tweet. I don't do it very often, but it was, Bernie had a little thing that says, well, the richest country on earth can't afford medical care or something like that. And I told him, I said, yeah, I don't know how you call this country rich when it's $22 trillion in debt. I mean,
Yeah, don't look at that
If you
number.
do a balance sheet, we're totally not rich.
Well, we have a 1-to-1 debt to income ratio for the group, and then of course the government, has a deficit every year, so we keep going
Yeah.
further into debt.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the thing about it is you can't. I don't think how you consider yourself rich if you got yourself a $100,000 house with $1 million mortgage on it. I don't consider myself rich on that, but maybe they do there. Okay, the next thing we've got on, which you always talk about a lot, are the self-driving cars. Interestingly, China has decided to roll out, and I remember this happened in Sweden. They're rolling out dedicated lines for the self-driving cars, so they won't mix.
You mean dedicated lanes?
Yeah, dedicated lanes. What they're going to do is keep left is in a bid to lead the race to fully autonomous vehicles. China is building highways with dedicated lanes for self-driving cars. There's a new 62-mile stretch of freeway which will have 2 lanes dedicated to autonomous vehicles. And I think it's interesting because that will certainly, it seems to me, do a tremendous amount to forward the autonomous cars, because they'll all be autonomous, and they can maybe put the sensors wherever they have to put them or whatever. But as long as there's not some guy driving around there creating havoc, it seems to me that'll be a really good way to do it.
They'll look. They have driven billions of virtual miles at this point.
Yeah.
Of virtual miles. And millions of actual miles. Millions. They're getting really good at doing that. So as much as I like the self-driving cars, this kind of thing to me is just a waste. This is China's concept of, oh, we're going to promote this particular technology. We don't have to. Just wait. It's coming anyway. And when it gets there, it won't need to have its own lanes. The cars will be better than the human drivers. And so
what's going to happen, of course, is what always happens is there will be one death, as there has been,
Sure.
and suddenly everybody will say, ban them all.
Yeah, but then they'll juxtapose that with the 40,000 other deaths.
Right.
And they'll realize, and then of course, like I said, once the insurance companies get involved,
Yeah.
and they start giving people discounts for having self-driving cars, that'll be the real shift.
Well, I think that one of the things I do like about this, of course, is that the lanes are for the self-driving, which means that if it's it could very easily be that it's a self-driving bus, for instance, and it goes down and it stops, you get on, get off, you go wherever you're going to go, but it's all autonomous. And I remember when I was in Sweden, and they were getting ready to do some work on, they were going to switch from driving on the left side of the road, as in England, to the right side. And what they did in the meantime is they set up all these lanes, especially just for the buses, going the other way, going down the right side, as we do here on the right-hand side. And it was, so they did. I mean, that's kind of good in a way because they weren't interfering with anybody, and they were learning the bus drivers were learning all how to do that. And I remember they had one day, it was like Sunday, October something or another in '66. They called it Högedag, and that was the day that everybody switched. I mean, it's like daylight saving time. Saturday night or whatever the hell it was, they all went out and switched everything over. And I thought it was kind of interesting because I learned how to drive on the left side, and when I was in Sweden, and I left just before they switched. But I remember when I drove over into Norway, there were all these signs that were saying, "Go over there," go
Right.
go over there. And of course, one of the sad things is when you make a left turn, you can get confused.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, as you do that, and all of a sudden some guy's blinking his lights at you. Oh, shit, let me get out of here. So it took a little while. And I remember when I took back before the bridge, they had a ferry boat. It would take you from Malmo to Denmark. And of course I had the Volvo. I bought a Volvo in Sweden, and I had a Swedish tag on it. And so I was getting off the ferry boat into Denmark, and the guy looked at me and said, "Yeah, no, you are driving on. Do you know how to drive on this?" And so I had to say, "Hi," in Danish. No, I didn't say it. I said, "Hey, I'm American. I know how to drive on the right hand side of the road."
That's right.
So anyway, they let me through. That was good. Okay, next item is, and this is a Supreme Court thing. You might want to know about this.
Okay.
This is about the F word.
Okay. Yeah, I saw this little thing, but I didn't read the.
Well, they're having arguments today on this thing. Whatever designer Eric Brunetti has been trying to trademark his FUCT, fucked trademark on line of clothing, but the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has repeatedly denied his request. The decision was based on the fact that the brand's name would be perceived by a substantial segment of the public as the equivalent of the profane past participle of whatever profanity in our language. So the Government Trademark Office has the right to bar trademark protection for words that are considered immoral, shocking, offensive, and scandalous. So
you would need to.
Right. Well, here's the deal, which is interesting. He sued. He said,
Right.
It's not the word. I mean, this is his trademark. And it's interesting because it's made it all the way to the Supreme Court. What was fascinating about this is the article said that during the oral arguments, they must have been Monday.
Okay.
During the oral arguments, the justices danced around having to use the word. And they never did. I mean, they just, when they're asking questions,
Yeah.
they refused to mention the trademark word. So
And that's appropriate, but I hope this guy wins because at the end of the day, you don't have to look. Think about this: if I have a business and I want to brand my business with the most offensive symbol that I can think of,
yeah.
how long do you think I'm going to be in business?
Well, that's number one. But you would look at Chinese restaurants. I mean, a lot of those are Chinese restaurants, and you see it, and their words are, fucked or something like that.
Oh, right.
I mean, but they get away with it all the time.
Right. Yeah. Andrew Schultz has a great bit about Vietnamese spelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's a word. It doesn't matter. You don't have to worry. We don't need an official person proclaiming what is offensive.
Well, it is interesting because Lenny Bruce was arrested for doing profanity. Then George Carlin got up there, seven words you can't say and so forth. But it's obviously become way more tolerant. I don't know if this is a degradation of society or not.
No.
But we become way more tolerant, as Lewis Black says. It's just words.
Exactly.
Get over it. And I know that I'll never forget when I was in Sweden again, when I finally learned a curse word in Swedish, which didn't mean anything to me. But I said it out loud, and people recoiled in horror. What is this guy from across the pond saying this word in our language for? And of course, I don't care.
Right. It
translated roughly as the devil, and because in England, for a long time, if you said bloody, it was a horrible thing. So this. It's just kind of interesting to me to see this kind of stuff.
Well, look, that's just how language works and how offensiveness works. Is we establish certain sounds as being the off-limit sounds.
Right.
And we do that so that we know that when you use those sounds, you mean some kind of business. There's something going on. It's something beyond just the words is happening.
Right.
And that's all. You just reserve those for those things. And then...
Well, of course, sometimes they lose their meaning, too, a lot of them.
Yeah, it changes all the time.
Changes all the time. I mean, for instance, one of the things that's kind of lost its meaning is racism. To me, I mean, everything's racism these days, or conspiracy, or what. I mean, a lot of those aren't curse words, but I'm saying they've lost their original meaning as far as I'm concerned. A lot of that stuff, but also the curse words.
Language is always in flux. I mean, that's another part of it, but we don't need language police.
Okay, let me see here. Okay, next item. And I thought this was interesting. Colorado tried a new way to vote make people pay quadratically. The state legislature used a method that's designed to capture the intensity of a voter's preference. Now, it's interesting because I thought one vote casts one unit of value in its purest form. And what they've done is they've given, they've tried this a couple different ways. You get like 100 tokens, say, on a particular bill, and how strong you are on it, you bid a certain number of tokens. Or maybe they have they're coming up with like 15 bills that they're going to pass. So you personally, you rate them about how many tokens you put, how important the bill is to you. Well, then when it's all said and done, the bill with the highest total gets bid on, gets decided first.
Okay, yeah.
And so it's like a popularity contest of some kind.
Right.
Instead of other methods which are not, how can you put this? If you have like 100 tokens and you are particularly enamored of this one bill, you could put all 100 tokens on that particular bill. Now you don't get to vote on any of the other ones.
Right, for some period of time or something.
Right, yeah, until they're all done right. So
Well,
I thought it was kind of interesting to see that because I guess there's a problem with one vote that the people would raise their hands or something, or however they decide to do the final voting on bills.
Well, look, voting is a problem in lots of ways. People think of it as a panacea, but it really is not that. It's a useful tool in certain circumstances. And from my perspective, the most useful that it ever gets is when everybody has to decide on one direction or another. And it usually comes down to something like, do we go to war? You're in it one way or another. So you get a vote. And so and it can be kind of almost like you want to know how the people stand in that, because you're going to need the people to fight the war.
Yeah, I don't see that. I just, they do this trivial stuff all the time. I mean, we see down here locally, for instance, these guys are elected by 25 or 30% of the electorate, and they figure they have a mandate on ruling what the other 70% are going to have to do legally.
Yeah. I'm agreeing with you that it's ineffective in most situations, and it creates a false sense of security. I was trying to identify the time and place when it was the most effective and most useful, which from my perspective has to do with some item of major consequence for everyone, versus little things. Like, we don't need to vote on whether or not our neighbor can eat venison or something, and to put that up for a vote is a misallocation of power. We shouldn't have a democracy on every single issue. We shouldn't have a mob rule on every single issue, and that's why we have the Constitution.
So that's why it's a republic.
Well, but even more than that, the republic limits the democracy, but the Constitution even limits the republic.
Right.
The Constitution says, "Oh, look, we don't care what you think you can do up there. You can't do these things
until you can."
Well, until you get rid of the Constitution or
Right.
whatever. And of course, I'm talking about the Bill of Rights here as well, not just the Constitution. I'm talking about the prohibitions, because obviously the power grants have been blown way out of proportion at this point.
Yeah.
But the prohibitions are still pretty much intact, and they need to stay that way. But these little tweaks on voting, I mean, you can do whatever you want, and I've seen initiatives put forth recently about direct citizen voting. I saw some TED talk. This guy was like, hey, we can eliminate politicians. We'll just have a virtual you who keeps track of your issue and all the things that you care about, and then you'll send your virtual issue, your avatar, up to Congress to vote on whatever issues it is. And I think it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
You're never going to get that type of correspondence between a person and their avatar. And his concept was that this avatar, you can teach it to learn all the kinds of things about your issues and then vote the way that it thinks you would want to vote. Yeah, well, who do you think is going to write those algorithms and such? It's not going to be you deciding. At the end of the day, computers can't decide things for people. The people have to make the decision. The machines can suggest this or that based on the input that it's giving, but that's just based based on the input that it's given, which comes from a human. So you have to have a human decide most things, and there's a whole bunch of things which humans shouldn't decide for other humans, like what to eat and who to marry and what to wear and things like that, and all the things we've determined are freedoms.
Well, I thought it was interesting that this. Now remember, now this is in the Colorado legislature. Everybody knows everybody.
Right.
So if they decide as a group to set up this other way of
that's
voting,
what I said. It's a
that's
little
fine.
tweaky thing.
That's
Exactly.
fine. You know,
I'm with you.
And it's interesting because you can there's 2 or 3 different ways to do this. Whether you have tokens or you actually, however, this article
There's a
goes
million ways to do it.
Right. There's a bunch of different ways, and they've tried them all, and and again, they're struggling to try and get it right.
You know, one thing that I think that one major shift we could have in voting that would make a huge difference is ranked voting.
Now we've talked a lot about that. Then that is where if you don't get number 1, then this is number 2.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they talked about that, and I think they started using that up in Maine or.
They have in a couple of places, and all of the game theory that I've studied about it suggests that it's a better way on almost every level. So,
Game theory, I love it.
Well,
no, it's true.
yeah.
It's true. You're right. That's what they talked about that in this article about game theory, and they've done a lot of stuff about that sort of thing. Okay, I've got one more thing to go here.
Okay.
Silicon, and this is Nancy Pelosi. Silicon Valley's self-regulating days, quote, probably should be over.
Oh, yeah.
Unquote, says Nancy Pelosi. It's
We're
a
better.
new era for tech regulation, says Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
And so in the UK, they've had this area. They said the era of self-regulation of these companies is over, and is it over in this country? It probably should be, said Pelosi. I think we have to subject it all to scrutiny and cost benefits and all that. Now, these people are talking about cost benefits. What a joke! These people have no clue on when you realize that
those are just words.
I know they are, but what's interesting when you realize how many laws are based on emotion, and of course, cost benefit, generally speaking, is only partially emotion, because we're here, for instance, they'll say, well, the benefit of this is a societal benefit.
Right.
It's a quality of life.
Right.
Well, how do you measure that?
Yeah, and then somebody says, well, we get back $43 for every dollar we put.
Yeah, no. Every time I see that, I said, I wrote in one time when they said they get $6 back for everyone and quote invested. I said, put all the money in there, for God's sake. We're going to vote ourselves rich.
Well, when I hear about that kind of stuff,
well, here's what they did. Pelosi says Silicon Valley is abusing the Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which says that internet companies are not responsible for what's posted on their platforms, and that means that they're just a platform, and people post on there. And then apparently this Section 230 says they're just a platform, and you can't be responsible. They can't be responsible for what people are doing on their own platform.
and that's what it should be. It's like AT&T being responsible for what you say over the telephone.
Right. Well, she says now's the time to
Well, like
230
I said,
item 230 is a gift. to
Yeah.
them. And I don't think they're treating it with respect as they should.
It's
she
a
said.
privilege.
For the average 230, there has to be a bigger sense of responsibility on it, and it's not out of the question that should be removed. So,
well, and of course, she has no problem pointing herself the
Czar.
arbiter of
That's right,
what's decent. And yeah, no, I watched. You look at Nancy, and I watched. AOC has a new Green Deal video out.
Was that right?
A 7-minute video where somebody paints stuff as she narrates. And
Is that the one where they put the people in it?
Yeah, with all kinds of stuff in it. She basically projects the future for the next 10 or 15 years or something.
Okay.
And her concept is very simply that as soon as we get the good people in charge of everybody,
Right.
then everything will be great. And that's it. I mean, she really believes in the concept that the benevolent king is going to get us what we want and keep the bad people down, and they'll never be supplanted by an evil king, and they'll never be corrupted. And
But
it'll
now,
just
who's going to... Now, you have to understand, there's all these bad people, and the question is, Are they going to vote for the benevolent king?
Yes, what happens is the bad people go to the polls, and then in a moment of clarity, they vote for the good people. And it can't happen any other way, because according to her model, no bad people ever get in to take over these czar positions that she's created. From her perspective, just as soon as we get the good people in there, it's such a juvenile perspective. It's like just thinking, oh, if I could just get my parents to behave correctly, then,
Right.
It's like, what are you thinking? But she lays it all out there, so you can go see. It's a Twitter video, I think.
Okay, I think I did say bits and pieces of
It's
it.
only 7 minutes long, and the art is cool. It's a little watercolor.
They were talking about who did it. There was apparently some outfit that put it together.
She said she spent months on it. It looks like she spent hours on it.
Okay. Well, there's this group that is one of her supporters, I think, that are video people that did it, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah, well, it's super simple. Again, it's one girl narrating into. She could be a 12-year-old the way that it's narrated. And then the good people get in charge and do the happy things, and then everybody's happy because we want to be happy and we like each other and we love and light and everything. It's just like. It's the simplest one side. Seriously, it is. And then it could be a Coca-Cola ad right at the end. You put Coca-Cola, and then that's it.
Remember the Coca-Cola ad?
I like to teach the world to sing.
Yeah.
That's it. That's literally her vision. So if you like that vision, and it's a beautiful vision, then
Well, they're always talking about. This is one of the problems about multiculturalism in a way. Is because politicians always talk about we're joiner, we're going to bring together everybody, all split. And of course, what they do is they have, they pander to certain groups to split off time and time again, and yet.
Oh, she talks about those groups. She talks about all the young people of color who are inspired by the new freshman class and everything. And I guess the rest of the people don't matter or anything.
Well, they did. Nancy said, she got 5 people here that are followers.
Yeah, well. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how that works out between the freshman class and the old people.
We're going to find out here when the election shows up.
Yeah.
So they're all raising money.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm done.
Okay, I think I might have one more thing. Just one more thing. Bernie is out there talking about universal health care.
Okay.
And it's just, I think it's interesting that we're finally seeing people. I saw Ben Shapiro finally do this. People are finally asking the Democrats and other people who are proponents of massive taxation and spending. They're asking them, hey, what are you doing with that money now? Your money that you would be taxed, that would go to these benevolent causes like universal health care. What are you doing with that money now? Are you giving to charity? And they're starting to list out the Democratic candidates' donations to charity as percentages of their income. And it makes perfect sense. If you want us to pay a whole bunch of more in taxes, why don't you lead by example? Why don't you get out in front and put your money where your mouth is and show us how it's done? Why don't you be the benevolent person that you say that you want us all to be? And like the Georgetown kids. I want to see the Georgetown kids pay the $27 anyway. That's what I want to see. I want to see the people who organize that campaign.
As we talked about last time, this is for reparations.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's the right thing to do, you do it. You don't wait for other people to do it with you. You don't wait until you can force other people to do it with you. You just do it because it's the right thing to do. So if you are a tax and spend liberal Democrat and you believe that universal health care is a right, then I expect to see 10% extra of your income donated to charitable organizations that are associated with healthcare. That's just
there's two things to consider here. One is, if it's such a good idea, you don't need a law.
Well, that's what it comes down to.
If it's a great idea and everybody agrees, you don't need a law.
Well, and here's the way the test for that is what I just said, which is, look, if I do it, if my idea is universal health care, I'm going to donate 10% of my money. I get my friends to do it, my family to do it. Everybody starts donating this extra cash. All of a sudden, we're all doing it. It's working anyway. We don't need the law then.
Well, he is
That's
talking.
the test.
Of course, what he said is the way he's going to pay for it. It's interesting. He says, well, it's gonna be free to you at the end point.
Right.
But remember now, you will not have to pay any premiums anymore. That'll add to your what you call it.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna pay premiums and whatever else is involved in the health care that you're currently paying.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay all that. But we're gonna take that money now. And so what you do is you pay it to us instead of the insurance company.
Right.
And
look, what they have
so you're not
said,
going to lose anything.
well, Bernie can't come out and say what the tax rate's going to be if he got universal health care. He keeps telling everybody they're not going to have to pay anything when they go to the doctor. But then he does admit they're going to have to pay more in taxes. What he doesn't admit is that the more in taxes is going to outweigh your previous health care bill. And it has to, because you're paying for the same services plus the bureaucracy that he's going to add onto the top of it.
Well, he's figuring on cutting out the insurance company.
I know he is. And so think about how well that's going to work. Let's imagine this argument I have with people all the time. They say the government's going to cut out the middleman.
Right.
Okay. Let me ask you this: how is there a middleman? Why is there a middleman ever in a situation? Because they're providing a service.
Right. They're like a broker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're providing a valuable service. They are facilitating the transfer of value from one group to another group, and they're taking a little off the top for themselves. But make no mistake, they are adding value to the system overall. Right. They have to be, or their job wouldn't exist.
Right.
So they're not removing anything from the system. They are reducing the input by adding value overall. Well, so when you take out the middleman, you're not going to make things less expensive. There may be small adjustments you can do by growth of company size. We all know that if there's two companies, let's say, that make exactly the same product, and they combine, and now they're a bigger company, they eliminate a lot of redundancies. And you could imagine that type of situation in our healthcare. In a universal healthcare context, you could say, oh, well, they're going to be the insurance companies and the drug providers and the distributors and the doctors all together in one company, and they'll eliminate all this extra payment from redundancy. Okay, we'll give you that. So you have one company now, but then you suffer from massive company
bureaucracy.
Well, yeah, there's all sorts of diseconomic influences that go along with having a giant company. Well,
there's also the accountability factor. In other words, if something goes wrong, who do you go to? I mean, you can't just say, like, if you get a bad meal at Burger King, you can walk over to McDonald's and get food, for God's sake.
And you can keep eating at McDonald's after that.
Right.
But if there's only Burger King left, you have to go back to Burger King. And your recourse is only to what? Vote somebody else into office?
Yeah.
Like that's going to help your health care? The accountability at that point is gone. And without competition, what we'll see is that one massive company will spiral into a giant monopoly. The money will be incredibly huge. It'll absorb far more than everybody thought before, as all those government programs do. And
it'll crowd out. Well, the problem is when you provide something, quote, for free, unquote, you crowd out the competition who says, well, we have to charge for it, and if we're going to make any money on this, and we can do a better job, but we have to charge you some money for it. But the people saying, like with education, I can go here to the public school and get indoctrinated for free, and I don't have to go to but there is a private school alternative, but not many people can afford that. I'm getting ready to write a letter.
Well, and you're paying twice, as we've talked about many times, and this would be the same kind of a thing when we get universal health care. But I just think,
what happens? That's the whole thing. Is what happens if you go and you're not satisfied? You walk in the door, universal health care, and you say, like I did, I need a lung transplant.
Right.
And they say,
sorry.
No, you're too old.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the hospitals here did say that to me.
Right.
Go home and die.
Right. And in the universal health care situation, that might have been what happened.
That would have totally been what happened, as it was. Because I was able to found another hospital that said, "Come on down."
Competition.
Yeah.
And that's look, for people. You have to accept the benefits of competition in the free market. Otherwise, you don't understand the whole economy. And this type of a system, Bernie doesn't understand it at all.
No, he doesn't.
And he's with those other people who just.
And neither does Robert Reich, of all people. I get his stuff. He's unbelievable.
Well, so I'll be looking to see, and that's the question that I would ask every Democratic candidate who puts forth a policy of spending. You want reparations? Where's your cash? Put your cash up there, and then you can talk to me about asking me for my cash.
Right.
So That's what I have in the
Lead by
saying.
example.
Exactly. Lead by example. Come on now. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. That was our presentation.
Our Wednesday presentation.
Thanks, Gene and Robert. Hope you guys had some fun. This is Kevin McLeod. He brings us these songs every week for free. And we distribute them for free. So join us again on Sunday. We'll be back. We have an issue. Oh, I meant to talk about the Smollett issue. Counselor Bart brought up some newly acquired facts in the Smollett case.
Okay.
Which may make a difference. It may give Smollett some additional defense to whatever's going on.
Well, he ought to know, right, Mr. He's a counselor? I mean,
Yeah, well, and he watched a podcast called Reasonable Doubt with Adam Carolla and Mark Garagos, who I don't like as an attorney, but he may have some good insights into things. I'm not, just because he's not a good trial attorney doesn't mean he doesn't understand the issues. So anyway, we may cover that next time since we didn't do it tonight. But
it'll still be there.
yes, it will. All
This
right.
is not something that's going to fade into oblivion.
Well, I thought it was just done and gone, but we'll see. I mean, there may be a little more life to that horse, so we'll see. All right. Thanks, Al. We'll see you soon. Very soon. Oh, this show also brought to you by my other book, Black and Blue Lives, How to Survive and Reform American Criminal Justice, by me, JD. It's available on Amazon. It's good if you have kids. Get them to read the center chapter there about how to avoid arrest. So, pick up a copy.
Don't come out of the car waving a gun. Good advice.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.